6 people have reportedly been killed in a vehicle ramming that's occurred in Lower Manhattan. And the latest information is that a man in a pickup truck drove into a bicycle lane, crashing into cyclists before then hitting a school bus. Police have said that he was carrying 2 fake guns. Other information suggests that at least 11 other people have been injured and that the driver has been detained. And you can see here now live pictures coming from New York. Other information coming from alternative media sources saying that the BBC are quoted saying that police made the arrest after responding to reports of shooting near the West Side Highway in Lower Manhattan. Police have urged people to avoid that area as they conduct an exercise to close down the area and establish what exactly has happened. There have been eyewitnesses who have said that a man drove at cyclists in that cycling lane before opening fire. So the eyewitness reports contradicting information coming from the police that the man who's actually been apprehended only had fake weapons. And as is often the case in these kind of breaking news situations, when the information's coming through, often it's contradictory and some of it will turn out to have been false. And the eyewitness reports, as engaging as they are, not always entirely reliable. Now, I think we can bring in a guest now. Former US diplomat Jim Jatras is on the line. And I understand, Jim, that this is pretty fresh information to everybody. I don't know how much you've kind of heard of what happened. And I'm hearing that this incident may be being treated as a possible terrorist attack. On what you've heard so far, what do you make of it?
Well, I've heard several things. One is that the suspect first ran his vehicle over a bike path, and then when the vehicle stopped, got out and started shooting people. There have been reports that the police initially said it was not a terrorist attack and seemed to be road rage. I don't know how that's consistent with firing a weapon at people once he gets out of the vehicle, if that is accurate. I've also heard that he, according to some news media, shouted Allahu Akbar, which would obviously be something of a telltale sign of a terrorist jihad action. But again, I don't know if that's been verified or not. I've also heard that the suspect has been shot by police but is in custody, so presumably he's not dead. That's all I've got to go on in terms of the news right now.
Yeah, just looking at some of the information that we've had confirmed as coming from the police, and they've said that this vehicle went onto a cycle lane, that it struck multiple people in its path. We don't know whether this was deliberate or something else, accidental, fleeing the scene of a crime, or, for example, at this stage we don't know. Eyewitness reports, though, have backed that up, that it was a vehicle ramming through people in a cycle lane, and that's going to make a lot of people think about the other vehicle ramming incidents that we've seen in Europe, which did turn out to be terrorist activity. Do you think it's too early to make the connection at this point?
Well, I think it really depends on whether the other parts of the report are true. If, in fact, the suspect started shooting people, I think you can make a pretty good guess at that point that he's ramming the bicycle traffic was not accidental, that it's not just simply losing control of the vehicle. Again, if that turns out to be true, that he was a shooter after he was using his vehicle as a weapon, if that indeed was the case. Again, I don't know what the basis are the allegation of his supposedly shouting Allahu Akbar. If that is true, that again would strongly indicate that the vehicle part of the event was not accidental.
And again, the slight contradiction here coming from reports of shots fired from eyewitnesses. The police are saying that the suspect, when he exited the vehicle, was in possession of imitation firearms and that he was shot by New York Police Department officers. In terms of what we do know, of course, that this is in a huge city, a popular tourist destination. In fact, I was only just yesterday looking at the prospect of going there for the first time myself. Now I'm having second thoughts, depending on how this turns out. What's it going to mean in terms of security for the future in the city?
Well, this is in Lower Manhattan, as I understand, is not that far from the old World Trade Center, or now the new World Trade Center that's gone up in replacement of the one that was knocked down on 9/11. I don't know how close this was to the actual business district, but it's also evidently close to some residential areas as well. Look, let's be honest. This is the kind of thing that can happen in almost any city. If this was indeed an intentional terrorist attack and somebody primarily using his vehicle as a weapon, tell me what city in the world that can't happen in. So I don't know that you're planning your travel to not go to this city or not go to that city really is going to make all that much difference.
Well, you know, the line of thinking is at what point are certain parts of the world being targeted? And we've seen it in France that when, for example, Islamic State have targeted an area, they've done so repeatedly. And as you mentioned, Fox News have reported that the attacker in this case shouted Allah Akbar. If it does turn out to be Islamic terrorism, what effect do you think that will have on government policy, in particular the travel ban on Muslim countries?
I don't think it'll have much impact at all. This is a completely different set of circumstances, where you have federal judges who, let's be perfectly honest about this, are not at all shy about usurping the constitutional authority of the president. If there's one thing that is very clear from the Constitution and the law, the president has almost total control over who gets admitted into our borders. Jimmy Carter froze all Iranian visas after the hostage crisis began in Iran. Barack Obama put various kinds of controls on people from 7 countries without a peep out of the federal courts. But everything Trump does, even after it is approved by the Supreme Court, then gets frozen again by yet a different judge. So I don't know that these judges really care one way or the other about any actual terrorist threat. And let's remember, we don't know who this suspect is. If he was somebody who was born in the United States, if he's an American citizen, maybe he's the child of somebody who came from some of these countries like the San Bernardino or the shooter at the Pulse nightclub in Florida, or maybe he's somebody who was a convert or somebody who became radicalized who was native here in the United States, a phenomenon we see very commonly in Europe. So there will be a lot of people who will look at whatever happened here and whoever the perpetrator was and say, yeah, but that has nothing to do with the travel ban, and it will have zero impact on what federal judges do to try to undermine the administration's authority.
Okay, speaking to former diplomat in the US, Jim Jatras. Many thanks, Jim. Let's just, in the meantime, cross over to RT correspondent Caleb Maupin. He's in New York, and I believe we can actually get him. Yeah, it's not the greatest picture, but we can see you, Caleb, and we understand that you're on the scene. What kind of information have you managed to glean?
Well, we just have arrived on this scene, and I'll tell you, traffic here in Manhattan is crazy. I mean, it is packed. Bridges are shut down. Roads are closed down. From what we understand, most of the buildings in the area are actually on lockdown. We're trying to get close to the scene at the moment, but as you can see, there are just police vehicles and news vans everywhere as we get closer to the scene. Things are shut down. We're arriving here at an intersection. This is about as close as we can get. Now, I'll turn around here so you can see behind me. There's just a crowd of folks that have gathered here at this scene, and this is about as close as we can get. Now, from what we understand, this incident happened near Stuyvesant High School, which is actually one of the most prestigious high schools in New York City, a very well-ranked school. That we heard about this incident where there was this individual who was driving on the bike path, intentionally mowing people down, then got out of their vehicle and took out what some are reporting to have been a fake gun before being shot by police. So many questions are still being raised, all kinds of information. But as you can see around me here, quite a crowd gathered here. All kinds of people gathered here at the scene trying to figure out what's happening. Some of the students were quite upset. People wondered if the whole thing was just a big Halloween prank, but in reality, it's turning out to be a very serious incident with at least 6 people dead. So a lot of questions on a lot of people's minds, a huge police presence here, crowds of people, a lot of questions being asked, more questions than answers. People are wondering, who is this person? Now, we understand that the shooter is in the hospital at the moment, not the shooter, but the perpetrator of this attack is in the hospital being treated for his wounds. He was shot by the police. So many questions are being raised. People heard gunshots. So we're here in Lower Manhattan, and we'll be giving you more updates as we try to find out and more information is revealed about what exactly happened here in Lower Manhattan on October 31st.